I grew up in a small town with my parents and younger sister. Let's call her Mary. My parents always had high expectations for me, even as a child. They were strict and always pushed me to excel in academics and extracurricular activities. They wanted me to go to a prestigious university and pursue a career that would make them proud. Mary was always the baby of the family, and my parents had a soft spot for her. She was the complete opposite of me, carefree and artistic. She dropped out of college to pursue her dream of becoming an artist and moved back home to save money. I loved her, but we were never close growing up. Despite our differences, I thought my parents and I had a good relationship. That is, until they asked me to do something that I knew would ruin my life. It all started when Mary got pregnant unexpectedly. My parents were over the moon about the news and began planning for the new arrival. But then they dropped a bombshell on me. They wanted me to drop out of college and move back home to take care of Mary and the baby. At first, I thought it was a joke, but they were deadly serious. They explained that Mary needed someone to help take care of her during her pregnancy and that it was my duty as her sister to help out. They also said that they couldn't afford to hire a caregiver or pay for childcare, so it had to be me. I was stunned. I couldn't believe they would ask me to throw away my future for Mary's mistake. I had worked so hard to get into college and was on track to graduate with honors. I couldn't give that up, so I refused. I told my parents I couldn't do it, and they were furious. They accused me of being selfish and not caring about my family. I tried to explain that I couldn't just drop everything and move back home, but they wouldn't listen. Now I find myself being kicked out of the house because I refuse to sacrifice my future for Mary. It's not fair, and I feel like I'm being punished for something that isn't my fault. I walked around my old room looking for any last-minute items that I might have missed. I had gone back to pick up all my stuff. My best friend, Emily, was helping me pack up the rest of my things. We were both quiet, lost in our own thoughts. I could feel the sadness and disappointment weighing down on me. After a while, we finally managed to finish packing up everything. As we walked out of my house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. It was like a part of me had been left behind in that house. Emily tried to lighten the mood by telling me about her new job and how excited she was for it. I listened, trying to stay focused on the positive things in life. We reached the car and loaded up all my boxes. The ride back to my dorm was quiet. Emily knew I needed some time to process everything. We arrived at the dorm and took the elevator up to my floor. I unlocked my room and walked in, feeling a sense of relief. This room might have been small, but it was mine. Emily helped me set up and organize all the stuff I had brought from home. She knew how much I loved to decorate, so she let me take my time and make everything look perfect. We sat down on my bed, looking around the room. "I can't believe they did this to you," Emily said, breaking the silence. I nodded, feeling the tears starting to well up in my eyes. "I can't either. It's like they don't even care about me anymore." "They'll come around eventually," Emily said, trying to comfort me. "I hope so," I said, feeling the weight of the situation sinking in. "I just can't believe they would choose my sister over me." Emily hugged me tightly, and I felt the warmth of her embrace envelop me. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Your life is yours to live, not theirs." I knew she was right. It was my life, and I had to make my own choices. It was time to start over and build a life for myself that I could be proud of. Update 1. A month passed by, and I was slowly starting to get used to my new life without my parents. However, their constant phone calls and messages were starting to take a toll on me. They kept trying to guilt trip me into coming back home and taking care of my pregnant sister. They would say things like, "She's your sister. How can you abandon her like this?" Or, "You're being selfish. She needs you right now." It was difficult to ignore them, but I knew deep down that I had made the right decision. I couldn't sacrifice my future and career for someone else's mistake. It wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't fair to my sister either. I tried to explain this to my parents, but they just didn't seem to understand. One day, they even showed up at my dorm unannounced, begging me to come back home. But I stood my ground and didn't let them manipulate me into doing something I didn't want to do. It was tough, but I knew I had to stick to my decision. As time passed, I started to feel more confident in my choice. I focused on my studies and made new friends on campus. I even found another part-time job that helped me pay for my expenses. It was liberating to be able to take care of myself and not have to rely on my parents for everything. However, I still miss my family and wish things could be different. It was hard to accept that they were willing to kick me out and cut me off just because I refused to do something that went against my values and beliefs. Despite everything, I kept reminding myself that I was doing the right thing. It was just a matter of time before my family would come to understand that as well. A week or two after my parents showed up unannounced, I got a call from my sister. I felt a pang of guilt as I heard my sister's sobs on the other end of the line. Despite all that had happened, I still loved her and cared about her. But I couldn't just forget everything that had transpired and go back to the way things were. "I'm sorry, sis," I said, "but I can't just come back and pretend that everything is okay. I still don't agree with what Mom and Dad asked me to do, and I can't put my own future at risk to take care of you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before my sister spoke again. Her voice was shaky. "I know you're right, but I just don't know what to do. I feel so alone and scared, and I don't think I can do this on my own." My heart ached for her, and I wished more than anything that I could be there to comfort her. But I knew that I couldn't give in to the guilt and pressure from my parents. I needed to stand my ground and focus on my own future. "Sis, I know this is hard, but you're not alone," I said, trying to offer her some words of comfort. "You have Mom and Dad, and they love you more than anything. They'll be there for you no matter what. And if you need someone to talk to, I'm here for you too. I'll always be your big sister, and I'll always love you." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before my sister sniffled and spoke again. "Thank you. I love you too, and I'm sorry for everything that's happened between us." "I'm sorry too, sis. I just hope someday you'll understand why I had to do what I did." After we said our goodbyes, I sat alone in my dorm room, feeling a mixture of sadness, guilt, and uncertainty. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I had to keep moving forward no matter how hard it might be. Update 2. 9 months had passed since I last spoke to my parents or my sister. I had been focusing on my studies and trying to build a new life for myself. But then, one day, I received a call from my parents. They told me that my sister had given birth and that they needed my help. They tried to guilt trip me again, saying that I was the only one who could take care of the baby and that they couldn't do it alone. My blood boiled. I didn't realize how angry I really was until after the call. "You have some nerve calling me after what you did," I yelled into the phone. "You kicked me out of the house because I refused to ruin my life for her, and now you expect me to care about her baby?" My parents tried to defend themselves, but I didn't let them get a word in. I was beyond furious. I screamed at them, telling them that they were selfish and that they had always favored my sister over me. I reminded them that they had no right to demand anything from me after the way they had treated me. "I hope you enjoy being grandparents because you won't be hearing from me again," I said before hanging up the phone. My hands were shaking and tears streamed down my face as I threw the phone on my bed. I couldn't believe that my parents still thought they had a say in my life after what they had done. Update 3. 2 months after the phone call with my parents, My sister called me up crying and begging me to come and see her baby. I was hesitant at first, but she persisted and eventually wore me down. She said that she needed me, that she couldn't do this without me, and that she missed me terribly. So I agreed to come and see the baby, but I made it clear that I was only doing it for her, not for our parents. When I arrived at my parents' house, my sister was waiting for me at the door. She looked exhausted, but also happier than I had seen her in a long time. She took me to the nursery where the baby was sleeping peacefully in his crib. I looked down at him and felt a surge of emotion that I wasn't prepared for. He was so tiny, so fragile, and yet he held so much promise for the future. It was overwhelming. My sister and I talked for a while, catching up on everything that had happened since I had last seen her. She told me about the baby's birth, about how difficult it had been, and about how much she had struggled in the weeks since. She was still recovering physically and emotionally, and she needed my help. I could see it in her eyes. It was a bittersweet experience seeing how much my sister had changed since the last time I saw her. She was exhausted and stressed, but she seemed happy to have me there. As the day went on, I realized that I missed my family. Despite everything that had happened, I still loved them and wanted to be a part of their lives, but I also knew that I couldn't sacrifice my own life for theirs. When it was time to leave, my sister hugged me tightly and thanked me for coming. I promised her that I would visit again soon, but also made it clear that I couldn't stay over. My life was my own, and I couldn't let my family dictate it for me. Driving back to my dorm, I felt a mix of emotions. I was happy to have seen my sister and niece, but I was also sad that things had come to this. I wondered if things would ever go back to how they were before, if I would ever be able to forgive my parents for what they had done. Only time would tell. NTA, I cannot believe how selfish and entitled the parents were being. To kick their own daughter out of the house just because she refused to sacrifice her future for her sister's child is beyond disgusting. OP made the right decision by standing up for herself and her own future. It is not her responsibility to take care of her sister's child. And it is unfair for the parents to put that burden on her. I hope they come to their senses and realize how wrong they were. NTA, if I were in OP's position, I would have done the same thing. It is not fair for the parents to expect her to put her own life on hold to take care of her sister's child. She has her own dreams and aspirations, and she shouldn't have to give those up for someone else's child. It's not like she was refusing to help at all. She just didn't want to put her own life on hold completely. The parents were completely out of line for kicking her out, and they need to take responsibility for their own child instead of expecting OP to do it for them. I am so proud of OP for standing up for herself and not letting her parents guilt her into doing something she didn't want to do. It takes a lot of courage to go against your own family, but sometimes it's necessary for your own well-being. I hope she continues to stand up for herself and doesn't let anyone else take advantage of her. She deserves to live her own life on her own terms. NTA, I truly appreciate the sister's common sense in this situation. She understood the gravity of the request made by her parents and did not want her sister to bear the burden of it. Her maturity and understanding of the situation was better than her parents, and it is heartwarming to see that she did not let her unreasonable demands come between her and her sister's relationship. Next story. My wife and I kind of had somewhat unusual lives. We started dating when we were 14, and she got pregnant when we were 17. She didn't want to go through with it at first, but after discussing it with both our parents, we decided to go through and raise the baby. The truth is, my parents are pretty well off, and I had a career set up from them the day I graduated, which I'm still at today. We're 33 now and have been married for 11 years. We aren't nearly as wealthy as my parents. We're very middle class, but our children know the extent of how our oldest, who's 16, came about. So today we were playing My League together in 2K. We were playing in the 2000s and he outsmarted me, I'll explain. I had a horrible season in 2002, and he traded me Michael Jordan and Rip Hamilton for my 2003 pick. I thought, haha, joke's on him. Now my team will be good and my draft stock will rise. It didn't. He outsmarted me. Michael Jordan was old and retired the next year, and my team stayed bad, so he used my pick to draft LeBron James. The only hole in his plan was Rip Hamilton was really underpaid, and he was happy with my team. So I extended his contract, and I told my son about how I'm a master of finances. He jokingly said, "I don't know if you're a master of finances. I think Grandma and Papa are." I said, "Yeah, having rich parents is hella cool." He said, "What do you mean? You had rich parents and got whatever you wanted. That's not cool." I said, "Well, if they didn't have what they have, I wouldn't have the job I had when you were born. And if I didn't have that, your mother and I wouldn't be able to bring a baby into the world. So yes, they're the reason you exist when you really think about it. So you better believe I thank God every day I had rich parents, because that gave me you." My son is really mad at me now, and the wife is pretty upset too. I don't know if what I said was that bad. I was trying to give him some perspective. AITA? That's how I read it too. Who said anything about abortion? I had a teen mom and was in an era of forced adoption. When I last spoke to my maternal grandmother before she died, I thanked her for supporting my mom so she could keep me. My mom loved all her kids, but if my grandparents hadn't been willing to support her, I wouldn't have been part of my family. I would have been a totally different person. My maternal grandmother was adopted herself, and that echoed through her life in a not great way. I think Dad was clumsy, but not an AH. NTA. Telling your kid the only reason you kept them is because of money is absolute shit. Of course abortion is okay, and keeping kids, but the decision was about the approach, which was a total AH approach. Especially given Dad was just butthurt he was losing at a game. Just because you can isn't a reason to do so. Next story. I, 28 female, and my fiancé, 31 male, have been preparing for our wedding for about 2-ish years now, since the start of COVID due to money issues that came with the pandemic. We decided it wasn't worth the expense to hire a professional wedding planner, so I've been the one taking care of things. The wedding is in February, if this information is useful. Last week, my sister, 30, and my niece, 4, were over at our house like usual. My sister and I aren't particularly close in the way I think most sisters are, though I obviously love my sister very much. Sometimes our personalities clash and we rub each other the wrong way at times, causing petty arguments like this one. My sister had told me that she was pregnant around 7 weeks, and I was very excited for her, beginning to ask questions. It was a nice moment until I asked who she'd told. My sister answered her husband, and now me, but that she wanted to reveal her pregnancy to our entire family at my wedding since everyone would be there. My heart sank. I could understand why, since, as she said, everyone would be there, but couldn't she have called over a call like she did last time? I didn't, and still don't understand why she feels she needs to do it at my wedding. What really annoyed me, though, was that her tone was more of a, "I'm planning to announce it then," rather than a, "Can I announce it then?" which I would have said no to anyway. I just don't think it's fair when I spent so much time and energy into this wedding for her to say something that would most definitely switch the attention onto her. She continued to ramble on about her pregnancy whilst I just stood there until her voice got aggravating enough to the point I asked her to leave my house. She was very confused, and I told her I didn't want her to announce her pregnancy at my wedding. That seemed to piss her off because she started going at me saying that as a sister, I should be supportive of her, which I am, just not at the expense of my wedding. After about 10 minutes of back and forth, I eventually told her that if she couldn't handle what I wanted at my wedding, then she wouldn't be invited anymore. The day after, my mom called me, yelling at me for my sister being upset and how I was heartless for uninviting her to the wedding when I went to hers. It was really early in the morning and I wasn't up for yelling, so I simply told my mom exactly how it was and why she got kicked out. To which she was stunned and hung up. A few hours after, I received a very long and angry text from my sister about how I told everyone about her pregnancy, calling me an ass for ruining the surprise and how she didn't want anyone except a select few to know this early in case of miscarriage. I haven't responded since I'm still kind of angry at her, but at the same time, I feel bad knowing that my mom was probably the one to tell after I told her, and that I was one of the few that my sister told, thinking it would be kept secret. AITA? NTA, you were clear you didn't want her to announce at your wedding. She was determined to announce at your wedding. You uninvited her. She went running to mommy with half a story. You just finished the story. She shouldn't have run to mommy if she didn't want you to tell her. What did she think you would do? Say, yeah, sorry, Mom. I'm uninvited because, I don't know, my mood ring went back, so I had to. All on her. NTA, while I think the obsession with not upstaging events with more fun news is sad, happiness isn't a pie, you can always have more. Your sister did this to herself by not respecting what is a really common feeling. Don't announce shit at other people's weddings, baby showers, birthdays, etc., and sent your mom after you with incomplete information. It was her own damn fault. My parents announced their engagement at my uncle's wedding, but they talked to the bride and groom in advance, and there was this whole thing where they arranged for my parents to catch the bouquet and garter belt. It's cute. NTA, making public announcements, pregnancy, engagement, etc. at weddings is a dick move, and she knows it. I'm guessing that since sister didn't do a big public reveal for baby, one, she's super keen to get a lot of attention the second time around, and decided hijacking a wedding was the most convenient way for her. You told her you didn't want that, and she spun a different story to your mother, so this is all on her. Congrats, and good luck with the wedding. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl